Broadcasting live on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota, in the evenings on WCPT 820 Chicago's Progressive Talk, and in the nighttime hours, 11:50 a.m. KKNW in Seattle. It is the Matt McNeil Show on your Monday. Good to have you with us today. Guest free for the show, but it's nice to have Patrick back from a vacation. Patrick, welcome back in, and good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, thank you for the warm welcome back. It's good to be back in the chair, back in the United States. It felt like a very long but very short trip, though I am excited to be back here.
And you went to Japan. We'll
Yes.
talk about that another day. But you remember that whole election thing we were talking about before you left? I got a funny story to fill you in on while you're back here. All right. You did bring me a variety of Japanese assorted things to try to eat. I don't even know what this is. There you go. There it is. It looks delicious, like little waffles.
Yeah, that's, I think, what those are, is these little waffle chip things. They're kind of more savory than sweet, but I did try those.
Boy, I love Japan because it's got tons of fish-flavored chips because, it's one thing we just don't have enough of here is, hey, swordfish flavor, delicious. Here is something. This looks like a little bit like a waffle, too, but it looks like it's pork chop flavor. Yum.
Yeah, that is the barbecue flavor, I believe, and it's very different than your barbecue chips here in the United States. It kind of has that glazed imitation. This is more grilled up flavor sort of thing. You
get me a chip here. Now, this potato that's on this bag here, it does look like it's, waiting for a Dateline NBC episode. I mean, it looks like it's guilty of something. I don't know what it's guilty of. It looks like cheese and honey flavored chips with some sour cream. Why not?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what those are. I think there's some kind of honey butter, but those were probably my favorite chip that I tried.
Well, we moved that over here, and then the final one here. This just looks like a plain salted chip, which looks nice. I mean, it looks like it. I mean, that might not be salt. It might be alum or something like that. They like their flavors over there. We have here in town, just basically about a mile from us here, is a fantastic Asian mall, and they have an incredibly nice variety of Asian products that you cannot really find anywhere else. And so some of this, I've never tried any of these, but it is amazing when you go over there because they do love their flavors. I mean, they do love their flavors. Yeah, I'll tell you, we'll save this for discussion another day because, once again, we got to get back at it here. And the reality is we got a lot of things to talk about. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. And I want to start off, obviously, it's Veterans Day. I hope everyone has a nice Veterans Day out there and remembers those who serve. President Biden reflected on the sacred obligation to honor and protect those who serve during the final Veterans Day appearance as Commander-in-Chief on Monday at Arlington National Cemetery. The observant event and ceremonial wreath-laying mark Vice President Kamala Harris's first public appearance since her post-election speech Wednesday, and with just a handful of appearances for of the sort left in Biden's tenure in office. This is the last time I will stand here at Arlington as Commander-in-Chief for the greatest honor of my life, to lead you, to serve you, to care for you, and to defend you, just as you defended us generation after generation after generation, Biden said. He recounted his years of visits to historic sites pivotal to the nation's military history, including his stop at Hanoi, Vietnam, to honor his friend and late Senator John McCain. The president touched on a variety of actions and investments the administration has taken to support veterans and their families, garnering applause when he mentioned the PAC Act, a bipartisan bill that expanded health care benefits to veterans exposed to toxic pit burns. Biden also pointed to the decision to pull U.S. military troops from Afghanistan, pulling from his jacket a card he has mentioned in the past. He says, lists the number of U.S. troops have died and have been wounded in Afghanistan and Iraq. The chaotic and deadly Afghanistan withdrawal, which the State Department blamed on poor planning among senior officials during the Trump and Biden administrations, has been a sore spot for Biden's record. But once again, the Trump people just basically blamed it all on him, even though they set it all up for him to fail. The president also reflected on his late son's deployment to Iraq, recalling, I still remember the day he asked me to pin his bars on him. President Biden continued, like so many of you, we are also remembered how hard it is when he was deployed, empty seats at the dinner table, missed holidays and birthdays, prayers of hope or worry repeated every morning and every night. So it is Veterans Day. I am a veteran of the U.S. Army myself. It's funny because I came out of it And I kind of just wanted to get to college, and I wanted to kind of get out in my career, and I wanted to kind of do those things, which I did. And, I got married, had kids, and it wasn't until I think when I had kids and we got to Memorial Day or Veterans Day, Armed Forces Day, 4th of July, that, my kids were, also it was really cool for them because Dad was a veteran, and I'm like, yeah, that is kind of cool. It is. I know I am a veteran, but I mean, it's kind of one of those things where it's kind of one of those things. It took my kids for me to stop and realize how cool that is, and take the honor with it. And so I do always get a lot of people that commend me on Veterans Day, and I thank you very much for all those people that do so. And I commend all the people who have served, either currently serving or have served in the past, those who have given the greatest sacrifice for this country's freedom, as well, and also the family members who often get left behind. As it is, they're serving at home. That's an undeniable reality. Very proud of that. And I've always been. I mean, one of the things that it's painful. Just this last week, one of the greatest things I got to see, and I got to see this when I was there, is when the East German border came down. I was in Old West Germany, and the East German border came down, and these people came streaming across, and they're just like, what do you want to do first? I said, I want to vote for whoever leads me. I don't want people just forced on me. Voting is, you get to meet people who have never had the ability to pick the leaders in their country, and you realize what an important and valuable thing voting is. Something 120 million people who could have voted in this country did not do. And reminder, Donald Trump got basically 74 million votes. He got 74 million votes. 120 million people did not even vote. So it tells you it's hard, because that's the great pride of America that you get, and the rights you get as an American citizen that we have fought for. And people just don't vote. And so I beg you, I implore you, next time, if we have even more elections, maybe it will take Trump and his team getting rid of the election system, or creating an election system where only white male landowners can vote, for you to realize, hey, maybe I shouldn't be sitting back and playing video games or watching a TikTok video instead of going out there and actually voting that day. But I hope it doesn't have to cut to something like that. But I'm kind of afraid that that's exactly what it's going to have to come to, having that right taken away before you finally start realizing maybe that you should be voting. I also note today I haven't seen any coverage of anything Trump has done for the veterans, because he doesn't care. He doesn't. I mean, it's oh, Matt, now that the election's over, we need to put things behind us. No. He dissed the soldiers, man, repeatedly. He dishonored Arlington National Cemetery with a photo op to try to make Biden look bad. Come on. No, I'm not going to give him a pass. He hasn't done anything out there today to salute the troops outside of basically pat himself on the back. So I will make my annual plea on Veterans Day to everyone out there. And I will say this, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. This goes for not only Democrats, this goes for Republicans. If you are a politician and you agree to these four things in their entirety, I'll endorse you. I will endorse you. You have to agree to these four things, but I will endorse you, because this is what supporting the troops really looks like. Number one, that all benefits are paid. That if someone serves our country and they are owed money for whatever reason, whether it's a service agreement, whether it is military, a medical a pay, a disability pay that they get, if they have made the greatest sacrifice they can for this country and have given their lives for America, the family members who are left behind, they get the benefits. No making them jump through hoops, no making them go through hurdles, no making them go through long and unfortunate application processes. No, that is got to be streamlined, and it's just done. The last thing these soldiers need is to basically jump through hoops. Now, I am technically a disabled vet. I am on disability because I got injured while I was in service. And I can tell you, when I had to get that all set up, trust me, that took me forever. And I had to go over to the VA hospital over and over and over again and fill out forms and talk to people on phones. I don't want that ever to happen again. So that's number one. All benefits deserved, they get. If it's the family members, they get them as well. Number two, and this is one which surprisingly gets a little bit more of the pushback. This and the next one. The first one is that we need to create a standard licensing agreement for all medical facilities in this country that basically contain this verbiage. If you are a medical facility, whether that's an emergency room, a hospital, or even a high-end cosmetic surgery clinic, if you perform medical procedures and a veteran comes through their door to get service, that you have to provide them service. Have to. You cannot deny them service. I am tired of veterans having to go 6 hours, 7 hours, 300 miles to the nearest VA hospital to get seen for medical conditions. They should be able to walk into the nearest medical facility they have and get seen, period. That should be part of the licensing agreement of any medical facility in this country. So that's number two. Medical care, taken care of. Number three, education. In all public education facilities, not private, public, that a veteran comes on in, their tuition and their books are covered. They have to pay for their dorm room and their meal plan and all that stuff, but the GI Bill can help cover that. But all military veterans who come out of service, fine, we make it 4-year service, or if you were in combat zone at all, you basically get a full 4-year college degree. You can take advantage of any time, and the books are covered too. That's number three. Number four, job placement. Nothing is more frustrating when I was there to see a sergeant that was in the military leave and was bagging groceries the next week. That is a waste of leadership and managerial experience. There should be mandatory job placement opportunities for all military people once they come on out. They deserve a good job. They've got the skill set to do a good job. They basically shouldn't be relegated to the lowest common form of job possible in this country. That's number four. And I'm dead serious. There's only been 2 politicians who have taken me up on that. Al Franken and Governor Walz. Those are the only 2. Everyone else, that's your standard. You want an endorsement from me? You endorse all 4 of those. All 4 of those in completely intact. And I will give you my support. Absolutely. Have a good Veterans Day out there, and thank you for your service. We'll take a break. Come on back. It's the Matt McNeil Show. It's the Matt McNeil Show. Good to have you with us here today. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205 is the phone number. I want to say just a quick side note. If you want to feel better about things almost immediately, quit Twitter. I'm dead serious. Now, I don't know if you know that I had made the rule, the idea that I was going to be done with Twitter. As a matter of fact, I was going to leave earlier this year, but a few people I knew that were political people said, stay till the election, and I did. The day after the election, I posted the stuff with Jeff Stein. That was it. I haven't been there since. And I should say, I haven't posted there yet. I've been cleaning trolls off the page, which are getting fewer and fewer. But, it is just a pit of hell. That is what it is. Stephen King, by the way, today got kicked off Twitter this morning after he called Elon Musk the First Lady, which that's a solid. Elon Musk is the First Lady. Stephen King, once again, Mr. Freedom of speech. I'm all about freedom of speech. Now all of a sudden he's a petty little, 7th grade junior high girl who's like, I'm a god. So cannot come to my party. Oh, ma. That's Elon Musk. He's a hack. And he's, and frankly, I definitely am not going to, I'm going to enjoy watching his eventual downfall. It will be a delight. But seriously, if I can give you some advice, if you are still one of those people on Twitter, get the hell off of that. You'll realize how much time you're spending in that cesspool. And immediately my demeanor picked up and got better. And you can find me, by the way, I'm on live on Threads right now. I'm on Threads. I'm on, on Facebook, on Blue Sky, and on Mastodon. You can find me there. All right, and I encourage you to do so because I am not going back to Twitter. Now, even if someone else bought Twitter, or even if someone else bought Twitter, it would only be when they brought back the rules they used to have there that I would ever think about going back. Because all it is just, it's a troll farm for alpha bros who basically want to tell women, we can rape you at any point. And that's Elon Musk's Twitter. Nazis are cool. I have had to deal over the last week with a plethora of people who have basically put forward the following mentality of, Matt, what are we going to do? Well, first of all, you need to get in touch with Doc Brown and build a flux capacitor. Then you need to get into your DeLorean and come back in time and convince 10 million people to vote. That's what because unless you can do that, there's nothing you can do. I had a friend one time say, Matt, we've got to stop. They're trying to develop this pristine lakefront in Minnesota. They're going to try to they're putting in walking paths and jungle gyms, and it's just a nice nature area. We need to stop it. And I said, well, give me some more information. And they sent me pictures showing that the lakefront had already was in the process of being developed. And I said to them, you're not stopping this. This is already going on. This is, I'm sorry. I mean, I wish I could say something differently, but the fact that there are bulldozers and, people laying down trails and they're installing a jungle gym, well, that's it's over. You've already lost. And you're having a hard time coming to grips with that. That is where, I've had people like, Matt, what are we going to do about Gaza? I mean, right after the election for about 2-3 days, I don't know about you, but there was a whole bunch of, pompous, smug, the Democrats should have done what we wanted on Gaza. And the first thing I said to them was like, well, what's going to happen there now? And let's just be honest. What's going to happen is all the Palestinians are going to be basically forced into probably a 4x4 mile square block with no power, no water, no satellite, no nothing, kept as a contained workforce while Israel develops the rest of the Gaza Strip into premier vacation and neighborhoods. Yeah, you had a chance to stop something at least some capacity, and you chose to go and do nothing because you wanted to be smug. And yeah, like I said, I got more on that coming up here. Israel's finance minister welcomed President-elect Donald Trump's election victory on Monday, saying it was time to come for the extend the full Israeli sovereignty over the occupied West Bank. He made the comments a day after the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in a recorded statement that he has spoken 3 times with Trump since the election and they see eye to eye on the Iranian threat. So basically, I hope you get your kids ready to get drafted because, sounds like Trump's going to send U.S. forces in to Iran. And it's going to take a draft. You're not going to be doing it. That is going to take a land invasion, and it's going to cost us a lot. That is going to cost us. But hey, Benjamin Netanyahu gets to walk all over all the dead American soldiers and plant the Israeli flag in Tehran when we're done. So, yeah, great. Israel's conflict in Gaza and Lebanon set the dominant meetings in the Middle East and the White House this week after deadly Israeli airstrikes over the weekend highlighted the increasingly brutal toll. I mean, they killed a whole much more people in Palestine. And, I mean, if I was Lebanon in the north, I would be very concerned about what they're planning on doing because my guess is going to be they're going to invade Lebanon. And there you go. And people are, well, what are we going to do to stop? Nothing. You're not going to do a damn thing because 10 million people did not vote. 10 million people did not vote. And because out of 120 million total people in the United States that did not vote. So what's done is done. Goodbye Gaza. That's gone. Goodbye Palestinian statehood. That's gone. Goodbye Palestinian rights. That's gone. If you worked 1/10 as hard at trying to get the Democrats elected as opposed to being the smug jackass afterwards to try to say, you should have done what I said, well, maybe, just maybe, you wouldn't be in this situation. But here we are. And I hope you're in college, especially if you're young, 18, 19, 20 years old, because if you're not in college full time, that draft is going to come for you. But not the wealthy kids. They'll be able to bone spurs their way out of it. It's going to be for the poor kids, primarily the minority poor kids. They're the ones that are going to leave their blood on the field in Iran. But yeah, that's where we're at. You can't try to win this after the fact. Donald Trump has already announced 3 of the worst people possible into his administration. Tom Homan is going to be the border czar. Remember, they made up the term border czar. Now they're actually turning it into an actual position, border czar. This is the highly aggressive, beat them where they lie border guy, where we're going to be, people are going to be raping immigrants, beating immigrants, and the big takeaway will be, well, no one can film them doing it. That's going to be it. So, you had a chance to stop that. You didn't do it. Elise Stefanik, one of the most least qualified human beings on the planet, is going to be the ambassador to the UN. Oh, yeah, they're going to love her. And in what is truly just a disgusting, disgusting display. Stephen Miller, the Nazi Stephen Miller, the Nazi. He's an actual Nazi. He's going to be deputy chief of policy in the White House. An actual Nazi. Matt, what can we do to stop it? Nothing. This is the consequence of 10 million of you saying a TikTok video is more important than getting off your ass and voting. That's the problem we've got here. We just don't have an understanding of what the consequences are. But whether that's going to get drafted, going to the military, losing your Social Security, the Affordable Care Act, or a crumbling economy, this is what happens. It is the Matt McNeil Show. Broadcasting in the nighttime hours at WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. In the nighttime as well, 1150 AM, KKNW in Seattle. And in the afternoons live at AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota. It's the Matt McNeil Show. 952-946-6205. I get it. That's a real harsh thing to have to say. But I've had a week of people basically say, but what are we going to do? Nothing. There's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. This is just the reality. And as harsh as that statement is, the faster you come to this, the better you are going to be able to say, okay, what is gone? What are we not going to be able to save? And what do we have a chance at saving? Because I can guarantee you right now, some things are gone. I don't think anyone in the Republican Party, and frankly, about 10% of the Democratic Party is going to stop and get in the way of anything that's going to happen in the far of the Middle East. Maybe, I would like to think that with the razor-thin majorities in the House and the Senate that they likely will have, that enough Republicans would say, no, I'm not. I just spent an entire campaign talking about this was not about women's rights. Women's rights were protected. I'm not going to pass a national abortion ban. I'm not going to pass that. I can't say for sure. I guarantee you there's going to be a tremendous amount of pressure. But, yeah, that might happen. You can call, you can work, you can do whatever you can. I mean, there's going to be an election, hopefully there's going to be an election in 2 years. Maybe if it looks like it's going to be horrifically bad for the Republicans, they'll, we need to wait until emotions have tampered down before we have an election. They might try to pull that off. And with that Supreme Court, they probably will. Social Security, I swear to God, if they get rid of Social Security, I'm going to be the first person to join a class action lawsuit that the federal government owes me my money back because they don't want to pay you back your money that you've been paying into Social Security. At least give me my money back so I can invest it someplace else as opposed to, giving it to a handful of, giving it to Elon so Elon can be even a bigger billionaire. I don't know like I said, I think there are some great white whales. I mean, the Department of Education's gone. Enough Republicans are going to, they'll kill the Department of Education. I have no idea what that. I think we're going to go back to the days when like Texas, basically, you had to be able to recite the Bible. Even the Jewish people and the Muslim people, they have to recite the Bible or else they can't graduate. That sort of thing. That's going to be my guess. But there is a legit question here on what happened, because there was a lot of discussion last week about what's going wrong with the Democrats. Why did they lose 10 million voters from 2020 in 2024 from their totals in 2020? There's a lot of finger pointing going on. You've alienated the working class voter. They should have been more pro-Palestine. They needed to turn on Biden. These are all bellowings, by the way, from bitter fools trying to make themselves look smart. If they'd only done what I said they should do. The truth about what happened is a misunderstanding of what's been failing the Democratic Party really for about 16 years now. The Democrats are not really a party anymore. They really are not. And I'm going to say this, and this is going to be a concept you probably have not heard, but someone has to actually be blunt. The Democratic Party really isn't a party anymore. It's basically a wide-ranging, non-cohesive pile of ideas. And it's because of this that it's the mess. Let me explain, all right? First thing, though, I want to approach the reality about the 2024 election. Did any group of people leave the Democrats and end up supporting Trump? Okay, well, not really. I mean, his base, maybe a few, the same 74 million people who voted for Trump in 2020 basically voted for him in 2024. His numbers are pretty consistent. Maybe there are a few Democrats that defected, and surely a few Republicans defected the other way, but nothing substantial that would allow someone to point to that group and say, that's the reason why the Democrats lost. No, you lost 10 million voters. Why? Why did 10 million people not vote? And by the way, there's a lot of people out there right now who are pushing this idea of major shift. No, Trump got 51% of the vote. Harris got 48% of the vote of the people that voted. This was still a fairly close election, even though the Electoral College favored Trump bigger than it did before. This was a 51 to 48. It's not 60 to 40, for goodness sakes. Stop trying to make this about yourself or look clever. This is just, the Democratic Party is not really even a freaking party anymore. And I'll explain that. Democrats just did not show up when everything was on the line, like in 2016, like in 2010, like in 2004, like in 2000, and so on and so on. You guys have a track record. Let's just say the Democrats have a track record on this. There are two things that happened on Sunday that answered the question of what exactly happened. Why did 10 million fewer Democrats vote than they did in 2020? Two things happened. The first was a series of stories I saw coming out in regards to conservative America that basically where the reality is starting to set in. There are a lot of Republicans who are now, after the election, publicly saying, I love Trump and all, but he's not really going to get rid of whatever a certain government program it is, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, the Affordable Care Act, whatever the case may be. He's not going to get rid of it, is he? My family needs that program. There are many Republicans who are starting to freak out as they come to grips with the consequence of their actions. Their blind obedience to the Republicans never made them once question that they should vote for a person who has vowed to hurt them with the repealing of government programs their family needs. The other thing that happened was an attempt to shame Democrats from the social media account of Democratic Wins, which posted a video from Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez, one of the handful of Democrats that won in red districts this election cycle. Their argument is that her common sense approach to a specific issue related to the voters. The issue, daycares can't peel and serve fresh fruit to kids because the act of peeling falls under the category of food prep and requires a kitchen setup, something most daycares don't have. Now, I agree with the idea that a bag of chips and cookies is a far worse snack option than a banana, but this is not the issue the Democrats should be championing nationwide. It worked for her, and I think there's validity there, but this shouldn't be a tent-pole issue by any means. Nor does their argument look at the election specifically where the Republican candidate was pretty bad. Her issue worked for her, but a lot of Democrats had some good common sense issues like that, and they didn't win. Republicans vote for their party uber alles. Republicans do. It's party vote. That's the important thing. They could care less about Trump's behavior or the radical and painful policy decisions that they're endorsing. For 30 plus years, the right has effectively brainwashed their followers to never care about the candidate or the issues, only the R. That's all that matters. This is why I've said Republicans would vote for a turnip if there was an R next to its name on the ballot. For the record, I'm not endorsing this. as this is the end result of such loyalty can be more akin to a cult than a political party. Sound familiar? Exactly. But this is why the Hitler-loving Epstein BFF won. No one cared until after the election, because they're blindly obedient to the party, not the individual. The Democrats actually have a far bigger problem. They are no longer a functioning party, but rather a pile of ideas. Tell me 3 things that every Democratic candidate in the party agrees on. Tell me 3. Tell me 3. I want you to think about that for a second. Tell me 3 things that everyone who says they're a Democrat agrees on. Exactly. Tell me right now what the Democratic Party's established policy on Gaza was. Tell me. Exactly. The wild attempt to blame this loss on something is a great example of how much the larger problem is being ignored. Republicans and Democrats like the two-party system. They do. Between the two parties, they have pretty much all the control of political power in the country. All right? But there has been a problem. The Republicans have continued to shrink ideals from their wide-ranging party, which included at one time moderates and fiscal conservatives. Now they are only a group of people that basically worship MAGA. They have also basically told the Republican Party members it's our way or the highway. Many moderates and fiscally conservative Republicans actually have left the Republican Party. Enter the Democrats, who started to adopt a wide umbrella position. Their mentality is if they were not Republican, then the Democrats would make room for them in the party. The Democrats rolled out the welcome mat to the disenfranchised Republicans and told them as long as they didn't badmouth the party, they didn't really need to endorse or support any of the party platform. They could bring their ideas into the Democratic fold and present them as Democratic policy. At the same time, Democrats concerned about losing votes on the further left-leaning parties started to welcome in those voters and politicians under the same wide umbrella. The idea was that there were going to be one big happy family, but what really happened was an unraveling of the Democratic platform. It's politically impossible to have a single political party that appeals to both a far further left than most Democrats are comfortable with, Bernie Sanders, and an outright Republican in Joe Manchin. Your umbrella is too wide. I want to repeat that. The Democratic umbrella is way too effing wide right now. You can't have a functioning political party that's got both Bernie Sanders and Joe Manchin, yet you're trying to do that. You wonder why your messaging is getting wiped out? The call is coming from your own damn house. Because the Democrats have decided to try to make this work, they've forsaken a cohesive Democratic Party platform, replacing it with about 3,000 people screaming ideas into what may or may not appeal to even 50% of the Democratic Party. With no consistent messaging about what exactly the Democrats stand for, voters turn them out when their Million Ideas platform fails to connect. Tell me I'm wrong. That's exactly what the problem with the Democrats is. It's just there's too many people screaming, you got to do what I say. No, you got to do what I say. You got to do what I say. You got to do what I say. Where's your freaking party platform, man? So many people. Why did so many people turn out in 2020? So let's go back to 2020. Why did so many people turn out there? Because that year, the pile of ideas at least had some consistency. Trump was screwing up COVID response horrifically. We forget that. The fear of illness and death allowed the Democrats to capture a majority of the voters, even ones who generally did not turn up on election time. The pandemic presented a clear choice, and 2020 became hard for the Democrats to screw up. It really did. We're for saving other human beings' lives. All right, well, that's pretty. The other side was put Grandpa in a boat and set it on fire and push him out into the lake, for God's sakes. That was them. Let's look further at 2024. I'm all for fair treatment of the Palestinians. I think what's happening down there is just wrong. But the lack of cohesive Democratic plan muddled the message overall. I have no doubt the Democrats had an official stance, but their everyone's ideas are valid approach welcomed extremists on the left who insisted Israel withdraw from Gaza, apologizing to every Palestinian as they left, Israel paying reparations to all Palestinians, immediate Palestinian statehood, and the U.S. ending all diplomatic relations with Israel. I'm pro-Palestine, but I'm nowhere near close to that kind of policy. From the other side of the same party, The approach was Israel could do no wrong and never should be questioned. In the end, the few far left Democrats might have voted out of idealism, not voted out of idealism, but the far bigger problem was the Democratic Party policy on the issue looked confused, disjointed, and contradictory. You're not giving people a reason to vote for you when you are a hot mess. And the Democratic Party, 99% of the time, is a freaking hot mess. This is another reason the pile of idea approach fails, because there is no consistent standard. Extremes from both sides can enter in the party, push an agenda that is way out of line with mainstream Democratic policy. It's hard to start a third party. It takes a lot of work and decades to succeed, but fringe issues don't need to do that as long as the Democrats pull out the welcome mat. The Republican the Republican light side of the party can bite Democrats in another way. In Minnesota, we did better than most of the country, but the party lost footing in the Minnesota State House. Why? I think a lot had to do with the main race in the Minnesota Democrats. The DFL here in the state of Minnesota were focused on the Minnesota 2 congressional seat, where Angie Craig easily won. The state party poured a ton of money into her race, and her message basically boiled down to, and I'm paraphrasing, I proudly disagree with Joe Biden, and I'm proud to work against the Democratic Party. What political party thought this approach in a bellwether race wouldn't hurt other Democratic campaigns? The pile of ideas says that as long as someone has a D next to their name, they can do anything regardless of ripple effects. An anti-democratic Democratic campaign caused more damage to lower ballot statewide races. You sacrificed 100 races for one. That's stupid. That is stupid. So there it is. It's just the party doesn't really exist. It's just a pile of ideas. And there's no cohesiveness. There is no consistency. And you can't criticize people for not understanding where you're coming from. I got a solution, though, when we come back. It's the Matt McNeil Show.
Baby, it's hard inside. You're running across my mind. I was twisted, I was over it. Saying I never believed in us.
It is the Matt McNeil Show. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. So let me recap. The Democratic Party is in trouble because they basically have tried to welcome in far more than their political party initially intended. And they're bringing in Democratic Socialists, Green Party people on the left. They're welcoming any Republican who has decided to leave the Republican Party on the right. And what you end up creating is a non-cohesive, way overextended political party where there is no cohesive message or platform. Like I said, name 3 things that every Democrat agrees on. You put it like that and you're like, oh my God, you're right. There aren't 3 things that every Democrat agrees on. You should have at least a consistent policy. Instead, because they're trying to be this wide umbrella, partly because I think they're afraid of a third party arising, but as well because they feel as if just by saying you're a Democrat now that all these people will run to them, and that's just not the case. All you've done is you've lost any cohesive nature to your party, and it's just basically a pile of individual ideas. And those ideas generally are not clicking because there's no consistent messaging. Some people were for tighter border security in the Democratic Party. Some people were for less border security, not open borders, but trying to get as many of the undocumented workers into the country as possible and through a process. You didn't have any consistency. So the economy, what was the economy? Well, the economy was doing pretty good, or was it horrible and needed to be fixed? Because that wasn't a pretty inconsistent policy. You've created this mess because there's nothing there, and you basically have to have extreme circumstances for the Democratic Party to resonate. So how do you fix this problem? Well, first of all, and this is tough love, Democrats. This is tough love, but this is what has to happen. If you want to be a Democrat, then you have to be a proud Democrat. No more campaigning against your own party. That, like I said, that is just how dumb can you guys be? Well, we got a candidate over here who's going to be more moderate district, so we're going to just let them rip on us all day long because integrity. Come on. You guys can't be this stupid. Come on, man. If that candidate doesn't want to be a Democrat, you say, thank you very much, all our best as an independent, go find a Democrat that does want to run. Stop with this. If they don't want to be a Democrat, then don't let them be a Democrat. You got to be a proud Democrat if you want to be a Democrat. That's not exactly rocket science here, okay? The Democratic Party needs to reestablish a list of 10 to 15 must-commit-to policy standards. Stuff like women's rights, health care for all, raising the minimum wage, taxing billionaires at a higher rate than the middle class. Heaven forbid. This list should be easy to compile, and by demanding anyone who wants to run as a Democrat commit to those issues, you'll likely trim the extremes away. You need to reestablish your party platform, and the party platform should matter. And if there's a person that wants to run as a Democrat and they disagree with all but one of your party platforms, you have to have the guts to look at them and say, I'm sorry, I don't think this party's for you. Take some integrity. Got to do it. 3, appreciate some ideas. I mean, the fruit thing in the daycare, that's not a bad idea, but it shouldn't be, that's not the reason why Democrats lost. But if the ideas are extreme and contradict the core principles of the party, then the party should be the loudest and most vocal about corrections and condemnations. The days of free-for-all are over. Your own party should not undermine your own message. Duh. Do a much better job at presenting the party platform to the media. The Democrats are horrific at messaging. They are. You guys can't get out of your own damn way half the time. You really are. You're a mess. You lost this election cycle because you were, by screaming 1,000 policy positions at once, you became nothing. You had your own party contradicting every candidate 4 or 5 different ways. You need to find yourself and then go back and say, here's what the Democrats are. If you want to be a Democrat, great. If not, good luck with whatever venture you try. And stop just allowing an extremist from one side or the other to jump into the Democratic Party just because they're not a Republican. All it does is open you up to undermining your own policy points. I guess, you want to be honest with you, my guess is the Democratic Party will not solve this problem. You know why? They are a political party who approaches, why say something in 3 words when we can instead say it with a 900-page thesis with full bibliography that's been run through 29 different focus groups. Yep, that's the Democrats. We should not have to get to the point where a global pandemic is what you need for your political party platform and messaging to make sense to the average voter. Listen to that again. It should not take a global pandemic for you guys to have your party's positioning and messaging make sense to the average voter. You got to stop trying to be everything for everyone. I know right now there's a hell of a lot of Democratic Party officials that I'm nothing. Who's that idiot on the radio in Minneapolis? What does he know? What does he know? You're right. And maybe it's maybe I am wrong. Maybe I'm missing something. I'm not the one that's basically having a hard time finding a way to convey who you are to the public. You guys are. And I think and I've been talking about this wide umbrella thing here for a long time because we had Bernie Sanders come into the state back in 2016, and we used to have a House rep here, Colin Peterson, who made Joe Manchin look like a liberal, for goodness sakes. And he was a Democrat. He was out in Minnesota 7, on the western side of the state. And he was the Democrat in the most conservative area. And I just said, this party doesn't make any sense if Bernie Sanders and Colin Peterson are in the same party. Those are 2 guys who are polar opposites of each other. They disagree on pretty much everything. And yet you're somehow in the same party. Hey, this is, I think, one of those things where you're going to kill the messenger, but you ignoring me is pretty much standard operating procedure. Chicago, Seattle, talk to you tomorrow. Minneapolis, St. Paul, hour 2 up next. Hour number 2 of the show here on your Monday. Nice to have you with us today. Matt and Patrick. Patrick back, of course. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. You know, Patrick, this weekend, it was nice. I think one of the things I want to encourage everyone to do is get out and do something, because just staying inside and stewing about the election is not doing you any good. So get out and see friends and talk to people about things like that. Patrick, one of the things I want to ask you about here, have you gone over to the Guthrie? Have you ever heard of this show, All the Devils Are Here?
Yes, I have heard of it.
Did you see it yet?
I have not, but it sounds like a hoot.
It is absolutely a hoot. Patrick Page, it's a one-man show, and it's actually a little academic, all right? But it's fascinating because I did not know this. The concept of the villain was created by Shakespeare. And that when he started plays, villains were basically the equivalent of like the devil on Homer Simpson's shoulder, saying, you better go, you're going to go do this. And he kind of, flushed them out a little bit more, to where it was, some of the villains were motivated by personal grudges and disdain. Some were by, meekness and desire. Some people just had evilness in their heart. Some people were freaking crazy. He talked about Iago from Othello. He's nuts. He's not good. Macbeth, which is then, people with good hearts decided to turn courtesy of witches. It's good stuff. Patrick Page was fantastic about that. Then I went out, Boludo, the Argentinian place, man.
Yeah.
Have you ever had the empanadas over there?
I have not had the empanadas. I have had their pizza.
Their pizza's top notch, man. That pizza is top 10 easy in the Twin Cities.
Mm-hmm.
Get one of the empanadas. Get the fried ham empanada. That's good stuff, man.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with those Argentine ham products.
You just can't. Oh, God. It was nice to get out into the city this weekend. And as much as the hellscape that is this last election week is, there still is a lot of really good things here that are incredibly nice. So remember that. And just remember that, and we got a lot, I'm going to spend a good chunk of this hour going through election stuff, because we have to understand what happened. We have to absorb it. We have to let it settle in. You can't just ignore that. That's the Republicans. But it's something that we need to take some time. Now, I will say, do you want delusion? Yesterday as well on Facebook, a right-wing friend of mine, friend being an optimal word, I don't know if that is the real thing, but they made a post where they said, the impact of Trump coming to power is immediate. My grocery list was $100 cheaper this week. Now, I grocery shop every week for my family. I do. When the companies were gouging, once again, it's not inflation if the corporations are having record profits. Those two things cannot work together. I talked about this numerous times, and I encouraged the Democrats to put signs up across the state that said, it's not inflation if the companies are making record profits. That's just greed. And so back in 2021, 2022, that was just greed. Now, if you are suggesting the government should come in and regulate prices on certain foods, and we do that to a point already, like you can't price gouge people in a hurricane zone when storms are coming. You can't price gouge people. You can't all of a sudden charge $18 for a gallon of milk. We have laws that actually say you can't do that. And so maybe if you do come out and say, you know what, our determination is the eggs are not costing you $9 a dozen, they're only costing you $5 a dozen, so we're going to say you can do $5.25 and you're going to still make a profit and do that. And that's one thing. I'm presuming most conservatives and most Republicans weren't suggesting price regulation in this country. But barring My guess is going to be you clearly did not just pay $100 less in groceries than you did the week before, because that's not how the world works. And no, the corporate world, including all the international corporations, didn't all of a sudden just drop their prices substantially just because Donald Trump won. That did not happen. This is you filtering your insanity through some sort of validation machine and trying to make it seem like something really happened when it didn't. Now, I don't know if you just didn't get as many groceries as the week before, you bought cheaper groceries than the week before, or you're just lying your ass off. It's one of the three. But stop. Stop trying to validate all this stuff, because the reality is, we're going to get a lot of this. We're going to get a lot of this, folks. This is going to be the next 2 years saying, it's like when Republicans, when they get rid of Social Security, what they'll do is they'll have Social Security die the day of the next administration taking office. That will be the day it dies. And the same Republicans who all of a sudden saying, yeah, we have to get rid of it, the Republicans told us it's bad, it's got to go away, will be the same people saying, how could the next president, that Democratic president, let that stand? How could they do that? Oh, they should have, it happened on their watch. You know, you want more proof of that? Go back and look at the freaking vaccines, man. In 2020, Donald Trump was going to save us all with vaccines. 2020, Donald Trump was going to save us all with that. He was himself in a lab coat looking at Petri dishes as we spoke. And the second he got out of office, because Donald Trump told them to hate the vaccines, every one of them, vaccines are horrible. By the way, you see him, they are desperately trying to distance themselves from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. all of a sudden. Have you noticed that? They realize that it will be a public relations nightmare if, jar of leeches Kennedy gets into any of the healthcare positions. Stop with your lies. Just stop with your lies. All right? It is. It's just all you're doing is if you yourself still have to try to make the argument for Trump after the election, it's you admitting that he's a flawed guy. And you still voted for him anyway. Like I said, Donald Trump says he loves Hitler. Donald Trump was BFF with Jeffrey Epstein, including the first 2 years he was in the White House last time. He was. And you voted for him. So when I call you dumb, don't you question me. You voted for a guy who said he loved Hitler, and you voted for a guy who was best friends with Jeffrey Epstein. That's dumb. Stop trying to turn that into something that's noble. But I like tariffs. Really? You don't understand those either. That is, by the way, another thing, too, which I have found to be fascinating, is the amount of Republicans who are suddenly realizing, oh, wait a minute, tariffs are not going to help us at all. Yep. I said this last week. I'm going to say this again. If you have a major project on your house that you want to do, roofing, concrete, siding, windows, you've got a crew that you need to get in there, I am going to highly, highly recommend you call anyone you can right now and get them in there and do it now. Because when they get rid of the undocumented workers who do most of this labor in this country, and they impose their tariffs that are going to jack up the prices of all the home construction stuff, whatever you were going to pay, you're going to pay 10 times more, and it's going to take 2 years to get it done because they're just not going to have the manpower to do it. So I'm dead serious. I would be making calls right now saying, who can you get in there before the snow flies? Good luck with all that. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. There has been some analysis of what happened here in Minnesota in the election. I want to go through some of these things here. One of the most striking developments in the 2024 election was that Trump's overperformance in deeply liberal urban areas. The Republican felon and election denier, he got his margins by 5 points in Philadelphia. Now, this is not necessarily that he got much more voters. In some cases, yes. In other cases, no. This just means his vote margins were there, which is far more a reflection of people not going and voting as opposed to him being more popular. Like I said, His 74 million is pretty much the same exact number as he got last time. This had far more to do with 10 million people not voting this election cycle than voted the last time around. His margins in Philadelphia went up 5 points, 9 points in Detroit, 10 points. He calls Detroit, that, and the people still didn't go and vote for him. 11 points in Chicago, around 20 points across New York City and Miami. That's why. But we're talking about going from like 10 points to 30 points. It's why the shift is still being sussed out. It's likely to source of contention among Democrats trying to figure out how to move forward. Well, get the people who didn't vote out to vote. Stop with trying to be a pile of ideas and actually become a cohesive party again. How about that? Part of the answer may lie in urban areas that did not see the big shift, including the Twin Cities. How and why were they different? Trump increased his margin by just 2 points in Ramsey County and only 1 point in Hennepin County. Why was the shift there so much smaller? Was because Governor Tim Walz was on the ticket, or because the fundamental demographic differences between places like the Twin Cities and those in New York? Were Democrats in Minnesota more energized to vote on account of big progressive victories in the state legislature in 2023? Despite all the publicity around the crime and homelessness in the Twin Cities, are the residents more sanguine about Democratic governance than those in the other big cities? To be clear, the overarching dynamics of the Twin Cities are that the same as elsewhere, lower turnout and a shift towards the GOP, but the magnitude of those changes is much smaller. Understanding why may help Democrats and progressives understand what they need to do differently in 26 and beyond. And like I said, Democrats don't just sit back and say, well, he'll make their life horrible, so they'll come running back to us. No, they won't. Not necessarily. You guys need to make sure you guys create a party again, not just a bunch of pile of ideas. Klobuchar dramatically outperformed Harris in the state of Minnesota. Another point of contrast between Minnesota and everywhere else, Klobuchar ran an impressive 5 percentage points better than Kamala Harris, a bigger overperformance than any other Democratic senator, with the exception of Montana's John Tester, who actually lost. Klobuchar won 21 of Minnesota's 87 counties on our way to a 16-point victory over challenger Royce White. Harris, by contrast, just took 9 counties. Part of the gap may be because Klobuchar had the benefit of a uniquely weak opponent with a short resume and a long history of bigoted remarks and scandals. Yeah, that had something to do with it. I mean, Klobuchar is a great candidate. She knows how to run. She knows how to do things. I think, and once again, I can get nitpicky. I talked about this last week. We can get nitpicky about it. Should the DFL gotten her out into more races and try to help out more people? It wasn't like she didn't do some of that, but should they have really said, I know you're not really having to worry about Royce. Can you get out there and say help up in the Minnesota 8, help in Minnesota 2 and 3. I think they could have done that more, but she's got coattails. Klobuchar's 16-point margin, and by the way, the things you dog on Royce White about, you can dog on in regards to Harris too, because Trump was bad. Still, Klobuchar's 16-point margin was the narrower than her 3 previous Senate victories, all of which yield margins of 20 points or more. Even more telling, in 2012, she won 85 of 87 counties. It's a reminder of the power of political polarization, which helps even the least qualified candidates rank up impressive vote totals, provided they appear on the ballot with the right letter on their name. I want to just make sure I meant as I say that. Because that is a pretty stark statement. That she at one point won 85 of 87 counties. This was not that long ago, 12 years ago. The brainwashing of rural America is an absolute undeniable thing. In that 12 years, most of those counties have had pretty much Republican leadership. The county, depending on most of these, the county seats are all Republicans. The House members are Republican. The mayors and the city councils in many of these towns are all Republican. The state senators are Republican. There are a few exceptions to that. But for the most part, most of these people are Republican. And in that time, quality in life in rural America has dramatically decreased. Dramatically decreased. As a matter of fact, the only thing keeping it doing any good is statewide policies passed by the Democrats in the state, to which the Republicans bemoan and bellow about. Ooh. The truth is, the Republicans have done nothing but fail rural America over and over and over again. And they sit there and say, yeah, do it again. Because they don't care about actually a better quality of life. I mean, think about, I'm going to just take a wild guess. This is not scientific or inaccurate. This is just, I'm going to take a guess. 30% of medical facilities in rural Minnesota have closed in the last 12 years. 30%. I'd probably say 5% of school districts have closed or have had to merge with other school districts because they can't get teachers and they don't have funding. When was the last time roads were repaired in your community? Not the state roads. Those get generally taken care of thanks to the Democrats. And, of course, U.S. roads, U.S. highways and interstates. But we're talking about your local roads, your county roads. Because I guarantee you, the county roads by the wealthy people in the county, they're top notch. But the roads by everyone else, not so much. No, your quality of life. I mean, you probably 12 years ago had 2 or 3 employers in town. Today, your only options are working at the gas station third shift, but you're number 12 on that list there for call-ins. And maybe, just maybe, you might have a job at the co-op. Maybe there's a restaurant in town you might have a job at. Maybe there's a grocery store in town you might have a job at. But pretty much that's it. I can't help you guys. You can't help yourself. I'm at the point when you guys bellyache and bemoan, I'm at the point saying, talk to your Republicans, man. You guys keep voting Republican, but then asking the Democrats to bail you out. And I think it's time for the Democrats to start saying, I'm sorry. It's not our job to bail you out anymore. You want to lose your health care system in your community? Fine. You want your grocery stores and your businesses to close down? Fine. That's on you. Don't look at us. We didn't have anything to do with it. That's your Republican leadership in your communities. Pretty much, and I can pretty much bank on this. Most of the good things that have happened in your community in the last 12 years are courtesy of the DFL. Now, part of this is the DFL's horrific messaging where they fail to do this for you and then equate that to them. That's on them. But one thing I can tell you is that any good thing that does get passed, Republicans come out there and say, I'm against this. It's socialism. This is the worst bill ever. And then they can't take credit for it enough. The bills that they voted against. Nope, I think it's time the DFL gets out the brass knuckles. You're stupid enough to vote for Republicans. Well, then you're stupid enough to basically get what they give you. And when they fail you, don't come running to the DFL. Go running to them. Let them know, hey, you're supposed to help us. Because us bailing them out is only fueling them go back to the Republicans and say, I'm voting for you again. Make them go to the Republicans. And when the Republicans say, I'm not going to fix this problem, then maybe, just maybe, they might, it's almost as if the Republicans have no interest in making my life better here. Maybe they have to do a little bit of the Andy Dufresne sewer crawl before they realize, hey, look, this is probably the wrong path. But to basically say you don't have to do that for them to, without them, so they never have to acknowledge their mistake that they're making, that's not right. Just my suggestion. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. We'll take a break. Come on back. It's the Matt McNeil Show here on your Monday. It is the Matt McNeil Show. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205 is the phone number. Let's take a look at some of the other races that happened here, namely the education races. Fergus Falls, 9 candidates were running to fill 3 seats in the West Central Minnesota School District, where nearly 3,000 students attend school. 3 union-endorsed candidates supported by about $25,000 in union campaign spending beat out the 3 Minnesota Parents Alliance-endorsed candidates, which, once again, this is, you can't, there is this idea out there that that sometimes it doesn't resonate, but the reality is that when you're looking at these people out there, there's like, we want to go and punish all the teachers. We're going to fire all the teachers. And that's your school board candidates And I'm paraphrasing their policies, but not by much. It's interesting to see Fergus Falls rejected that. In the Twin Cities suburb of Osseo, there were 6 candidates running to fill 3 open board seats. None of the candidates were incumbents. They raised about $9,000 between them for websites, business cards. The district current board has cited clashes over policies regarding gender inclusion, instruction, and LGBTQ pride flags. On Tuesday, voters backed 2 union and school board integrity project candidates and 1 Minnesota Parents Alliance candidate. So basically 2-1, the sane choice won out there. In Brainerd, there were 7 candidates running for 3 seats. Only 1 didn't secure an endorsement from either the Minnesota Parents Alliance or the local teacher union. All union-endorsed candidates were incumbents. Of those, 2 won re-election. The 3rd open seat was filled by a Minnesota Parents Alliance-backed candidate. These are the people, once again, that you got to fire all the teachers. Teach the Bible! Once again, I'm paraphrasing. I have no idea actually what any of their policies were, but I make jokes. That's what I do. But no, they don't like teachers. They don't like the teachers. They don't like the teachers union. And they feel as if every teacher should constantly be told every single day by 30 parents what they should and should not teach every day, which, yeah, great. In the 2022 election cycle, Brainerd saw a frenzy of school board campaign spending and candidates racking up nearly $80,000. This year, the spending had come down closer to $11,000. The 3 election winners will oversee a district serving at least 6,000 students in north central Minnesota. Minnesota Parents Alliance, a conservative organization launched in 2022, endorsed nearly 130 candidates in 56 Minnesota districts in its voter guide. The teacher union backed nearly 100 candidates in 33 districts. The School Board Integrity Project, a progressive organization launched last year, endorsed 45 candidates in 27 districts. In the 29 districts where candidates from both the Minnesota Parents Alliance and the Teachers Union or School Board Integrity Project faced off, and 29 districts, 31 of the Minnesota Parents Alliance endorsed candidates won. 50 union or School Board Integrity Project endorsed candidates won. So basically, out of 80, the vast majority, 81, the vast majority were what I would call saner candidates. Education Minnesota President Denise Sprecht claimed victory in an emailed statement saying union-based candidates won nearly 75% of their races. So, good stuff. And so, the schools, it's interesting. Where was up in Thief River Falls? They had the school was doing like bake sales and stuff to try to raise money for the school. They came out with a referendum to basically, it was a lesser referendum than they had in the past, and it actually passed. So that's a good sign that you do get some of this sanity when it comes to the school. I've always said this: if you're in rural Minnesota and you need to get a bill passed, I think the first thing you say is that there's and I know already a lot of the sports programs are disconnected from school budgets, but you just basically have to lay it out there. There's not going to be any school support for the hockey team. There's not going to be any school support for the football team or the basketball program. That money is going to be saved for educating kids or fixing the school buildings. Or even more harsh, I think it's time, considering that these guys want to keep knocking down these things, I think it's like, okay, here's the deal. Your nearest school district will be 50 miles away because we will have to merge with that school district to survive. We're going to have to close these schools, and that's where your school district will be, 50 miles away. Now, if you want that, fine. Don't vote for the referendum. If you do want that, fine. Vote against it, and then don't sit there and complain when the school closes. Like I said, I think it's time. Democrats, your problem is that you do not make these people understand the consequences of their actions. The minute things start getting rough for them, you're like, oh, don't worry, we'll give you a hug. And all you're doing is you give them a pat on the back, and then they run back and they vote Republican. I'm sorry. I think you need to get to a point where if we have to close down school districts and they say, why isn't the governor of the state helping us? You have to look back and it's like, you voted for this. You either voted against the levy, you voted against the teachers, you voted for Republicans who are against public education spending. This is what you voted for. Stop looking at us about having to basically change your diaper after you screwed up, man. That's on you. You are not going to solve this problem by welcoming people in to constantly turn on you every other election. And by the way, if I can be blunt, that goes for any union that endorsed a Republican. Democrats, DFL, if you are giving them any credence, you're a fool. I have seen this pattern now for 3 times. They champion against you, they champion against you, they champion against you, and then all of a sudden the Republicans start delivering to them, and they take away their what rights and their wages and their benefits, and they come, you need to help us, they're being big meanies. And you say, okay, fine, no problem. And you help them out. And what do? They turn on you and endorse the Republican. They turn on you and endorse the Republican. They turn on you and they endorse the Republican. And then all of a sudden, things get bad again. Oh, you guys need to help us. And here you go. If a union endorsed a Republican, I think it's time to cut them loose. When all of a sudden the inevitable happens and the Republicans either try to go to make them right to work or cut their wages or cut their benefits or take away their rights, by all means, all the unions that supported the Democratic Party, return those phone calls, help those guys out. But the ones that endorse the Republican, you say, I'm sorry, you don't have a seat at the table anymore. You need to go talk to your Republican buddies who told you they weren't going to do this. You're an idiot. We all saw they were going to do this. You're just a fool. But hey, this is what you wanted. Minimum wage, no bennies, no pension. You got your dream. And I know that there are DFLers out there who are like, that's me. No. That's just what it has to be. It is not helping the DFL to constantly bail out entities or voters who vote against their best interests, which is against the Democrats, and then in turn come scrambling back to the Democrats over and over again. If they're not going to learn their lesson the easy way, well then just let's let them learn their lesson the hard way. And that's hard truths, but I guarantee you, if all of a sudden the Democrats don't return their calls and they see their other union buddies getting saved, well, maybe all of a sudden when it comes to that endorsement, maybe they all of a sudden understand. Maybe it just can't be Trump. It just can't. You guys it's time for you to toughen up. It's time for you to toughen up because it's not doing you any favors to constantly basically go back to them and say, we'll help you out again. You're just basically, what's the term? Why get the cow when they're giving away the milk for free? Yeah, something like that. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. We'll come back. More on the elections when we do return. It is the Matt McNeil Show on your Monday.
At night, I was feeling down in my mood.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. It is the Matt McNeil Show. Patrick, while you were gone, I don't know if you heard about the one election result that we had that's kind of, this is going to be a mess. You see the Minnesota House is going to be a tie, man?
I did see that, yeah.
Oh, God. Well, I mean, okay, there is a chance it won't, but it's highly unlikely. Here's the deal. Lawmakers in the Minnesota House, here's just the latest. I talked about this extensively last week. Lawmakers in the Minnesota House are gearing up to work across the aisle during the upcoming legislative session, which will likely see a rare, even divide of power between the two parties in the chamber. With Democrats, Republicans, and by the way, they're trying to sell this as, what a massive Republican win. Dude, it's not like the Republicans have a 10-seat majority in the House. They threw everything in the kitchen sink, even allowing all their Republican candidates in the metro area to run as, we're not really Republicans. And the best they can do is a tie. And so, yeah, I mean, every bill is going to have concessions if it's going to have any chance at passing. Now, I will say this, before we have our Tomasini-Bach moment, Democrats, you are talking to your House members and saying, we're not going to have people who are constantly torpedoing our party to basically get one or two things from these bills. You're not doing that, because I guarantee you I will work my ass off to get any Democrat that does that again thrown out of that house. I'm going to do everything in my power. If I get the impression that you are working with the Republicans over the Democratic DFL party, I guarantee you I will do everything in my power to end your political career after this next year. I'm dead serious. I'm not going to tolerate. The Republicans don't have this problem. And even though a lot of them campaigned on, I'm really a moderate, I'll work with the other side of the aisle, they're not going to. So Democrats, you sitting there and doing that, you got one chance at controlling the narrative here. And if you always have a dumbass Democrat over there who's basically constantly going, well, I think I'm going to work with these guys. Well, good luck with all that. Democrats, Republicans anticipated to be split to be 67-67. Partisan policy goals should sit on the sidelines as lawmakers work to enact any kind of budget. The power-sharing agreement is anticipated to and reminder, too, it's not like the Minnesota House has the final say in any of this stuff. The governor has a lot of say, and the Senate, which is still in the hands of the Democrats, is going to have a lot of say. Democrat incumbents have won both House District 14B in Sherburne County and House District 54A in Scott County, according to the first tally of votes. And the House will be evenly divided if those candidates hold on to their seats after the recounts. If either Republican candidate wins, the party will take control of the chamber with a one-vote majority. Following election results, Sherburne County said some mail-in ballots were processed and counted. They weren't uploaded to the Secretary of State's election reporting system due to a damaged memory card. After the election results were updated, DFL incumbent Dan Wolgamott's lead over Republican challenger Sue Eek, it's E-K, Eek, grew to nearly 1 percentage point. While the difference is no longer close enough to trigger a state-funded recount, Sherburne County has asked the state for permission to hold its own public recount with county funds. The county says it has received preliminary approval from the Secretary of State. Meanwhile, the other one that's much more close is the House District 54A. Raisby and Shakopee remains close enough for a state-funded recount. The DFL incumbent, Brad Tadke, just 14 votes ahead of the Republican challenger in Aaron Paul. Current House Speaker Melissa Hortman said she is in an interview that she is not expecting the recounts and to change the results of the race. That said, power-sharing measures such as co-chairs on committees and equal representation on committees are likely to be agreed on. Now that we're both partners in governing, everybody will look bad if people don't cooperate and get things done. Even with power evenly divided, the majority of at least 68 votes will be required to pass proposed legislation off the House floor. The legislative session begins on January 14th. Like I said, going back and looking at what the agreement was in 79, the Republicans became the speaker. The three most powerful committees were all controlled by the Democrats. The Republicans had another committee that was pretty powerful. I think it was the tax committee, was controlled by them. And then I think there was at least two or three other committees where even though the Republicans chaired those committees, the majority of people on those committees were still Democrats. So that's how they kind of had to do it. Now, it doesn't stop a bill coming to the House floor and being voted on, which, 68-68, they're keeping track who's taking a sick day, that sort of thing. But you definitely need to, and once again, and here's the ultimate clincher, is that if that does happen, say that all of a sudden you got two Democrats who are sick one day, and the Republicans try to pass a bunch of bills, if every Democrat walks off the House floor, they don't have a quorum. They can't have to have at least 68 people to be able to do that, and so that would end that day right there. So there you go. They're not going to let. There is a fail-safe there, which is pretty. Someone was thinking. Now, obviously, you weren't thinking if you had a tie. I mean, you clearly. I mean, I do like the idea of the Secretary of State becoming the Speaker of the House. That's actually, if they can't decide, if the Republicans and Democrats in the House can't decide on who's the Speaker of the House will become Steve Simon. That's the way the law is written, and I don't think he really wants to spend 4 months over there in that position. But I think you need to establish something. Maybe the auditor becomes the becomes the Speaker of the House. I don't know, but something needs to be fixed with that. There's also some other things that just need to get fixed. This election, we got a problem in this country. We got a problem in this state sometimes. Voters in Itasca County voted overwhelmingly this week to re-elect a county commissioner who's been dead since September. Are you sticking it to the man because, like beating a dead horse? I don't think he feels it. I don't think so. And I know this county commissioner just because of the name. Itasca County Commissioner Burl Ives. No, not that Burl Ives. He's a different Burl Ives, if you can believe that. He was reelected to the position of more than 72% of the vote. More than 72% of the people voted for a dead guy. Defeating his opponent, Burl had previously served two terms as commissioner. He died at the age of 57 on September 11th. That's pretty young. Itasca County Auditor Austin Rolling told the Star Tribune that Ives' death came too late to legally remove his name from the ballot. The county will now certify the election before then immediately declaring a vacancy, which will trigger a special election. The special election is expected to take place in the spring with a primary in February. That's generally how they do it. It's something like this. They just wait till after the holidays. January, February, there's a primary, and then they, by March, April, they're doing the election. So expect that to happen. But please, come on. 72% voted for the dead guy. And before you say, well, yeah, it was a way for us to stick it to the other guy. No, just don't even vote. Just don't even vote, because now you look like a bunch of idiots who voted for a dead guy. Well, it's a way for us to give him a tribute. No, not really. It's a way for you guys to look like you're idiots, and I hate saying it, but it's the truth. You look like fools, man. You voted for a dead guy. I'm going to guess he had an R next to his name. He was a known Republican. I don't know. But, yeah, it's not exactly a bellwether of modern democracy when the dead guy is winning. And if you want to honor him, go buy him some flowers and drop him off at his grave. Write a nice little poem about it, get it published in the newspaper under the editorial section. Buy a frickin' billboard saying thank you very much and all our best to the family. That's how you say thank you. You just don't get it, man. You're right. No, I do not get voting for a dead guy. Do not. The man who led the Minneapolis Police Department's press office during the murder of George Floyd has been elected the mayor of New Hope. Dear Lord. John Elder, who served as the Minneapolis Police Department's public information officer from 2013 until his resignation in 2021, wrote the now controversial and infamous press release published in the immediate aftermath of George Floyd's death. Elder, who has been a member of the New Hope City Council since 2008, was declared the winner on Tuesday after beating fellow councilman Jonathan London by 1,600 votes per CCX Media. A special election will now be required to fill his council seat. George Floyd, here, the George Floyd news release, released in the hours after George Floyd's death. Minneapolis Police Department statement posted below came under a touch of criticism for omitting a lot of key details of the incident. Reminder, this was the story that they were telling about George Floyd, who was murdered in the street by 4 officers, namely Derek Chauvin, who drove his knee into the back of his neck and suffocated him for 9.5 minutes. On Monday evening, shortly after 8 p.m., officers from the Minneapolis Police Department responded to the 3700 block of Chicago Avenue South on a report of a forgery in progress. Officers were advised the suspect was sitting on top of a blue car and appeared to be under the influence. 2 officers arrived and located the suspect, a male believed to be in his 40s, in his car. He was ordered to step out of his car. After he got out, he physically resisted officers. Officers just lie after lie after lie after lie. Officers were able to get the suspect under handcuffs and noted he appeared to be suffering a medical distress. Officers called for an ambulance. He was transported to Hennepin County Medical Center by ambulance, where he died a short time later. At no time were weapons of any type used by anyone involved in this incident. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension has been called to investigate. No officers were injured in the incident. Oh, thank God. Body-worn cameras were on and activated during the incident. Officers were able to get the suspect into handcuffs and noted he appeared to be suffering mental distress, reads one of the lines in the issue. The Washington Post columnist Philip Bump wrote, the sentence contains the longest "and" in the history of English language, and it skips the nearly 10-minute period in which Officer Chauvin knelt on Floyd's neck, causing the 46-year-old man's death. The news release sparked a debate over transparency in police communications. Critics argued the elder's release was an example of what they saw as the department's attempts to obfuscate the truth after controversial police killings, which it is. Reminder, if it's a black guy, it's always the gang banger. That's kind of the thing. That's what they do. It's character assassination right out the gate, and that's exactly what they did with George Floyd. For his part, Elder later told the LA Times that he based the initial release on information from sergeants who work on the area computer-aided dispatch, which did not mention the use of force, and he is literally zero intent to deceive, or dishonest, and disingenuous. As a result of the controversy, the Minneapolis City Council in 2020 voted to move Minnesota Police Department's public relations duty to the city's communications office. After leaving the Minneapolis Police Department, Elder served as an emergency management director of the Isanti County Sheriff's Office, now holds a public relations role with the Robbinsdale Police Department, according to his LinkedIn. And now he's the mayor of New Hope. Sure would love to read that press release. I wonder how embellished that is, for goodness sakes. Dear Lord. All right. I'll pass on the two guys in South Central Minnesota that won the races after both submitted guilty pleas to gross misdemeanors. Once again, not exactly the beacon of election integrity. When I do come on back, I'm going to get out of politics completely. I do want to talk about this story out of Africa, the potential murder for hire of the man that was out there on the Christian missionary trip. We'll talk about that. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. It's the Matt McNeil Show. AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, the Matt McNeil Show. Two more suspects have been taken into custody in the death of a missionary working in Africa, in addition to the missionary's wife, according to a report by the Angola press agency. Bo Schroyer, 44, a former Detroit Lakes police officer and real estate agent, was killed in an act of violence on October 25th, according to his hometown church. He'd moved to Angola in 2021 with his wife and 5 children to do missionary work. His wife, Jackie Schroyer, 44, has been arrested in her husband's death in Africa days later, according to leaders of the Lakes Area Vineyard Church in Detroit Lakes and missionary organization SIM USA. In an article published November 7th in the Angola Press Agency, reported that 2 men were arrested in an alleged murder-for-hire plot leading to the missionary's death. The article, which is translated from Portuguese, cited details provided by the Criminal Investigation Service, which is under the supervision of the Angolan Ministry of the Interior. The apprehended suspects included a 23-year-old man and a 24-year-old man who worked as a security guard at the Schroyer home. Police continue to search for another suspect. All of the men suspected in the slaying have criminal histories that include armed robbery and kidnapping. According to the report, Jackie Schroyer is accused of being the mastermind behind the killing. The outlet cited suspicion by police that the wife and security guard allegedly were involved in a romantic relationship and that Jackie Schroyer had misgivings about leaving Angola once her husband's mission trip was to end. The Angola Press Agency reported that Bo Schroyer was killed when he allegedly was lured to a remote area when the suspects were pretending to have car problems. Jackie Schroyer had reportedly left the scene at the time. Allegedly, the suspects were supposed to be paid $50,000 in total for the killing. The outlet said a knife along with Angolan kwanza worth about $5,000 was seized as evidence in addition to the vehicle used to commit the crime. Bo Schroyer had been a police officer in Detroit Lakes, a city of 10,000 people, for about 7 years before becoming a real estate agent and then later a missionary. Ugh. Now, I will say this, and I'm still would love to have somebody give an update on. If you see the picture of these two, there's a lot of kids there. They seem to have a fairly large extended family. Are the kids okay? Are the kids coming back here? What is the situation there? That's something that we kind of need to get some information on. Because I don't want to... I mean, I would hate to think that there's basically, I mean, obviously, dad is gone. Obviously, the emotions of that. Mom being arrested. Obviously, the emotions of that in the killing of their dad. Yikes. I'm hoping someone from the church, from the missionary service, is getting those kids out of there and back to a relative in a safe place here in America. Somewhere, for goodness sakes. I'm hoping the state media will get an update on this story because, hey, if I have to throw a few bucks in to get them back here, I don't mind doing that. Let's get the kids back here because that's not where they probably need to be. They need to be back someplace a little more safe. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. It is Veterans Day. As I said at the beginning of the show, I salute all those who served, who are serving now, who have served, who have given the ultimate sacrifice for their country, and the family members who have bravely stood by those soldiers as they have fought. I don't know what's in store for you guys coming up here. I can tell you right now, I don't think you're going to get a lot of respect from the president. He'll bravado this, but I mentioned he might want to go to a war with Iran. And that's going to be a lot of dead American soldiers and probably a draft. I'm going to guess that there's going to be possibly troops firing on American citizens in cities. I would imagine that. I really do pray for you. I pray for what's coming, and I hope it's not nearly as bad as what I think it's going to be, but I really think it's going to be bad. I'm praying for you guys out there. Native Roots Radio is up next. Have a good one. We're back tomorrow. Till then, see ya.